I'm Ray Cullum, and I'm a member of the Marion Bermuda Race Organizing Committee. It is my pleasure to be here today with Dr. Tom Vander, who has done multiple Bermuda races on different boats and all double-handed. So I would like to investigate that a little bit more with Tom to see how he has handled that over the years. Tom, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the boats you've been on and how you got into doing it double-handed.
Well, my sailing experience starts a long time ago when my brother and I were 6 and 4, I being the older one, and we started racing snipes in Michigan on a lake. And in high school graduated to starboats. And then after going to medical school, I sort of quit that because I had no time for anything and dropped out of sailing except for occasional journeys down here with friends sailing, but really didn't sail much until we moved from Worcester, Massachusetts to Salem, Massachusetts to start a new heart surgery program there. And while there, I bought a Hinckley 48 built in 1968, which I loved. It was a gorgeous boat. It was not a very good sailing boat, at least upwind or in light winds, but I raced in a couple Marblehead Halifax races on that boat, and then eventually did my first Bermuda race on that boat, fully crewed with 8 people in 2008. And that is why I ended up double-handing thereafter. It was like herding cats, and we had ended up with 2 factions on the boat which almost couldn't talk to each other because they were so confrontational, and it wasn't much fun, and the boat looked like a garbage pit when we got there, and everybody abandoned me when we got to the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club, and I was left to clean it all up with my wife, who had joined me by plane. So the next race, 2010, again, this is all Newport, Bermuda, I repeated the race double-handed with a friend of mine, and ever since then I've been doing it double-handed. After that first race, there's sort of an interesting little anecdote, because we got into Bermuda and he said, "We've been cheating the whole way, my crew." I said, "Why is that?" He'd been taking scopolamine.
Oh, sure.
I said, "Why is that?" He said, "We've had 3 people on board. We had you and me, and then we had Binnacle Boy." And he thought the Binnacle, he knew it was not a real person, but he thought it was.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
So anyway, I've been doing double-handing ever since then. And the 2023 Marion Bermuda Race was the first time I did that race. I think I've done 7 Newport Bermuda races before then.
And as you went, you changed boats. You found out that beautiful Hinckley 48 may not be optimized for ocean racing.
It wasn't. It was a great seaboat. It could handle anything, but it was under-canvassed, and with a full keel, attached rudder, and a yawl, it really didn't have a very good handicap. And so in 2018, we were starting right next to a friend of mine whose boat, a Morris 36, eventually won the race. We were with him right at the start, and beyond that we never saw him again. And by October of that year, he and I sailed that boat up from its home port of Vineyard Haven up to Marblehead, and I was the owner of 2 boats for a while. Not willingly. We had trouble selling the Hinckley, but eventually we gave it away to Maine Maritime.
Now, if I remember correctly, you did the 2023 Marion Bermuda Race on Yankee Girl, the Morris 36.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I did 2022 Bermuda Race on the same boat.
Okay, okay. How did you fare in those 2 races with her? A little better than the Hinckley?
Well, it's a much better sailing boat. It goes upwind and it goes in lightish air. It's not very good below 5 knots, but it's a much more sensitive boat to sail. How we did is a different story. In 2022 Bermuda Race, we got in heavy weather and then blew out the elbow at the exhaust manifold, and that ended up with water locking the cylinders, and so we sailed the last 2.5 days without any electricity, no radio, instruments, anything, lights.
Boy.
So we sailed dark for 2.5 days, and my crew and I each had fully charged iPhones, and so we used an app in the iPhone to navigate.
Have you been using the same, being there's only two of you, have been using the same crew
No,
for the last several years?
several times, but not always. So the first time I did it, I sailed with a colleague from Corinthian Yacht Club in Marblehead, and I think we did 3 races together, including some Halifax races. And then family got in his way. That is, he had a young son, and he had to spend more time with him, so he wasn't able to. So I've had probably maybe 4 or 5 different crews for the 8 races.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Marion Bermuda, last year, I sailed with John Bixby, who has done a number of Bermuda 1-2s. So he's a very experienced short-handed and single-handed sailor. And we had a great time together. And he is doing the Bermuda return race with me this year, from Bermuda back to Newport.
Right. So what would you say is the most important thing in, selecting that other crew member? Because I think that being double-handed, you have to be fairly focused and fairly narrow in what you're looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say the most important thing is how you get along with that person. And that may be more important than sailing ability and experience. Although those are obviously very important. You couldn't get along with somebody well who's never sailed and compete in the race.
Right.
John Bixby hit both of those marks. Because he's done Bermuda single-handed, it was really valuable to have him along, because a lot of the race last year, Marion to Bermuda, he was single-handing because I was down below doing navigational calculations. I hadn't realized that it would take me 4 or 5 hours a day to do this all by hand and using the
Sure.
books and charts.
Yeah. Talking about celestial, did you start with a blank sheet of paper, or did you use a celestial computer of some sort?
No computer.
No computer.
No.
Oh, good for you.
That's what took so long. With I had the app on my cell phone, and it would have taken just a couple minutes
Right.
to do all the calculations. But doing it by hand in the old-fashioned way with a nautical almanac and I used, is it 229?
Oh, good. Sure.
That took me a lot longer than I thought.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to make small mistakes in adding and multiplication.
Yeah. So what do you and your crew do as far as preparing before the race? As far as, do you use a weather service? Do you do a lot of pre-planning? Do you follow the Gulf Stream for a while? How do you put that together?
I have not used a privately owned weather service at all, except for 1 year. I think in 2010. I use Expedition as a planning tool, and I use them to download weather, and I use Predict Wind for the same purpose. And yes, I look at the Gulf Stream usually every couple days for several months before. I'm not actually sure how much that helps. I think if you look at it just before the race, you can get as much out of that.
Probably.
So that's the way I prepare for weather. And then we try to plan the route so that we enter the Gulf Stream at the proper spot, which I found a lot easier when I was using a GPS and a chart plotter than doing it celestially.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure we got in the Gulf Stream at the proper place last year. And then download weather as we go along, and so that will change my plans to some extent on the way.
How about preparing the boat? Do you and your crew prepare the boat together? Do you go out and do training sails? Do you do anything like that?
That's two questions. The first is preparing the boat. And most of that I do with the help of the yacht yard in Salem, where we keep the boat in the winter. So I work very closely with them, and I'm doing the same even this week, getting ready for the races this coming summer. As far as training with the crew, it's hard because most people have lives outside of sailing,
Yes, they do.
and they have jobs. I don't anymore. I'm retired, but it's hard to find crew who will have the time. So we do it as much as we can. I have been lucky in that all my crews have been very experienced sailors and very experienced offshore and short-handed sailors. So we need just a little time on our boat to get acquainted. We encounter problems, and some of them we haven't solved yet. For example, how do you handle a man overboard double-handed when you're downwind with a spinnaker up?
Yeah, very difficult,
It
to say the least.
We actually have a plan that we are going to try as soon as we get the boat back in the water in a few weeks.
Yeah.
That I think we can work out.
Right. As a CCA member, they've sort of changed their tune on how you do that sort of thing now. No more figure eights or none of that. It just drop the sails and turn the engine on. So, makes a lot of sense to me. So as you're going down the course, you did say that you will continue to download weather and so predict wind.
Yes.
How about course changes and so on? How do you sort of handle that? Do you really watch? I mean, you're going celestially, so
One race.
One race. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you really watch the variance in your track, your planned track, and make adjustments then? Or how did you do that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
When you had planned a track, for the race, whether it's a rum line course or whatever, but as you're taking celestial sites, you would see, well, maybe I'm this far east of the track, maybe I'm so far west of the track. Do you do those adjustments as you go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But sometimes we're not east or west of the track because of faulty navigation. It's more often because the wind has either taken us there or we've gone to seek out the wind there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Much of which was missing on the 2023 race. We were
That's
pretty
right.
much becalmed for 36 hours.
Yeah, as we all were, guys. So what was the, you said this was the first time you used celestial.
Yes.
On the race. Are you going to do it again if you do the 2025 race?
You'd have to ask my wife.
Ah, okay. There's two questions there, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
She made me promise before the 2022 Newport Bermuda race that I'd only do 2 more races.
Oh, okay. All right.
After that race, that I'd only do 2 more, Marion Bermuda and then Newport Bermuda.
Yeah.
So it depends on how persuasive I am. The answer to your question directly is, if I do the 2025 race, it would definitely be celestial.
Okay.
And I thought that was so much fun. I remember quite distinctly learning to read in the 1st grade, and how I felt as if a whole world had opened up to me. That's how I felt after finishing a race with celestial navigation.
Wow, boy.
I just love doing it.
That's terrific, really terrific. I enjoy it. I've done 8 races, and 6 of them have been celestial. And if I'm able to do 2025, I will again go celestial. I have a fabulous navigator, and we have all the trust in the world in him, and he does a terrific job.
Yeah.
And we really would do it again.
I can't claim that we had a fabulous navigator because I did it, and we both knew a little bit about it, but not much more. And I learned a lot on the way.
Do you know if there were anyone else in your class or the double-handed class that was doing celestial? Because I would think that would be really hard.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anyone else.
Yeah. Okay.
But there could have been.
Yeah. So if someone came up to you now and said, "Hey, listen, I'd like to really prepare to do an ocean race. I've never done one before," what would be the first?
Celestial or any ocean race?
Any ocean race. And then we'll ask Celestial.
All right. Well, I would say, I would ask if he's had any offshore experience before. And I would suggest that they start small, like, you know, a local race that starts and ends in Marblehead, Newport, or wherever, and is an ocean race over 100 miles or so.
Right.
And there are a number of those races
There
around. And then go up from there.
Okay, good.
My first ocean race was Marblehead, Halifax.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people start with returns too, which really lets them get a feel, a taste for offshore.
Yeah,
you know.
I seconded with a return because I started out with a race to Halifax, and then I've always sailed back with all the races.
Yeah. So the second part of that question is, how about they were interested in Celestial? How would you approach that?
I would study a lot. There are a number of books you can get, and I also took a course over at the, where was it? I was New York Yacht Club at, what is it, Harbor Court?
Harbor Court, yeah.
The little building down near the water. There was a course given by
Ron Wisner.
Yes, and one other person last year, and both I and my crew took that, and I found that quite valuable.
Good.
And it helped reinforce what I'd learned, and it helped correct those things I'd learned incorrectly.
Yeah. Well, Ron Wisner is a very large supporter of celestial navigation.
Yes, he is.
And he's a good teacher.
Yeah,
And,
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, he really does a really good job. So any changes to Yankee Girl this year in preparation for Newport?
One I discussed with you earlier, we're thinking of adding on a boom brake in addition to the preventers that we always carry.
Yeah.
I've added some hardware that will enable me to carry out what I think is going to be the plan for a man overboard double-handed scenario with a spinnaker up.
Okay.
Which basically involves unfurling our 145% jib to 100%, then jibing or coming about. I haven't decided which is going to work best yet.
Yeah.
And collapse the spinnaker against the windward side of the jib, and then heave to, essentially, and then have time to get some sails down and then motor back to the MOB.
Wow. That's going to take a bit of practice.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Wow, geez. Well, Tom, I want to thank you for today. It's very insightful, and to see someone that's enjoying it as much as you do, and knowing when to change boats to one that's probably a lot more fun and a lot more fun to sail, and to do it celestially, I think that's fabulous. So thank you. And
You're welcome.
I hope I will see you on the Marion Bermuda Race starting line in 2025.
I hope so too.
If
Maybe
I
you
need
should
to talk to your wife, let me know.
I will.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Yep, you bet.